So as many of you already know, I am currently in the middle of my Ultimate Lost Media iceberg. I highly suggest you go watch the first part if you haven't already, but for those who don't know, my Ultimate Lost Media iceberg is a 9-layer iceberg that covers several subtopics with entries totaling over 400. One of these subcategories that I covered was lost episodes, that being the first layer, and during that I spoke about an at the time lost pilot for an iCarly spinoff named Gibby. Gibby was supposed to center on the character of Gibby Gibson, reprised by Noah Monk, as he becomes a mentor to 4 middle school students who are bullied as they hang out at the Bixby Rec Center. At the time I made that part, only various screenshots, the pilot script, and an audition tape for one of the child actors had surfaced. 8 days after I uploaded the first part, the pilot was actually found, as it was uploaded on YouTube by user Media Garage. Although they took it down shortly after, it has since been archived in several places, including YouTube and the Internet Archive. When I first found out about it on the Lost Media subreddit, I couldn't help but notice that the comments were, let's say, very critical about the pilot. Well, that couldn't be right. I mean, this was a canceled spin-off of iCarly, one of the funniest series on Nickelodeon, made by Dan Foot Fetish Freak Schneider, who even posted a tweet claiming that it was hilarious. Well, me being curious, I buckled down and watched the entire pilot, and they're actually kind of right. This thing really sucks. I know that wasn't the answer you were probably expecting, so let's actually break down this pilot. So the pilot begins with this sort of title card, and immediately we jump into the cold open. For some reason, all the audio is in the right channel, so I've taken a liberty and mixed it down to mono for you guys. I know, I love you guys that much. Anyway, the story of the cold open is that something attacked Gibby's teacher's butt. After Principal Franklin walks in, it's revealed that Gibby has a weasel for some reason. So Principal Franklin assigns him Saturday detention, but because the weasel convention is in town, he instead has Gibby serve the middle school cafeteria all week for his study halls, and that takes us to the actual title screen of the series. We immediately come back to the cafeteria with Gibby serving the middle schoolers. This group of kids starts throwing food at this other group of kids, which causes Gibby to save one of them from, I think, a chicken nugget? Yeah, it's a chicken nugget. Forget all the other food that was thrown at them, but Gibby swan diving Jeff Hardy style over this table and saving this kid from one chicken nugget is enough. So Gibby tells the other kids that they're friends, and that saves them, because Gibby is popular from iCarly. The next scene is of Gibby feeding his weasel, and he turns around to find the 4 middle schoolers from earlier. By the way, this scene takes place in the high school, who think that Gibby is actually his friend. The exposition that is given is that they're unpopular, and Gibby agrees to hang out with them. Then the best joke of the entire episode happens.
Sure. What do you guys have to do at the school?
Most of our parents work, but not his mom. He just couldn't go because he's having trouble getting pregnant.
Like, what? It's so out of left field.
So these 2 cheerleaders come up to Gibby and do the average "are you really loyal to them" bit, where they say they're doing upside down cartwheels. Yeah, that's the Dan Schneider sexualizing kids special. We finally get introduced to the Bixby Rec Center, which I assume would have been the main location of the series. So it's in this scene that we get a look at everyone's personalities. There's Marcotte, the nerd of the group, Flip, the suck up, like really all he does is just suck up. Then there's Winston, I assume the leader of the group. The only exposition that we get of him is that he's paranoid, and then they do this little paranoia bit for like a minute. Finally, there's Jordy, the sass of the group. So there's the next scene where the 5 of them are sitting around. Then this employee starts yapping about a hat that someone lost, but it actually turns out that it's his own hat. This is Ozzy, who is the dim-witted character. So the manager comes in and starts berating Ozzy, and I don't even want to talk about this, but we have to. The worst bit of the entire pilot happens. No, scratch that. This might actually be the worst attempt at comedy I've ever seen.
You put sunscreen on those 2 little boys outside and to fill the basketballs with air.
I do all that.
No, you put sunscreen on the basketballs and look at those little boys.
Yeah, this is where the pilot goes on a downward spiral. Gibby then starts to hit on the manager in his weird, creepy way. Like the rest of the pilot, he's just really close and touchy with her. These two sketchy guys appear, they talk for a bit, then they leave for no reason. We should just forget about them because there's no way they play a role in the climax of the story later. While Gibby was getting rizzy, he found Flip had underwear put on his head and found that none of his friends did anything about it because they were scared. Gibby then teaches them that friends have to be there for each other, which is actually a really good message. Then they have this minute-long dodgeball montage set to a Pitbull song. Gosh, I'm so old. So Ozzy then jumps too high on the trampoline and gets his head stuck in the ceiling. He needs to go to the hospital and someone needs to go with him, so the manager entrusts Gibby to lock up the shop. She then gives Gibby a job at the rec center for no reason. It's just like, oh, you were really creepy to me and you were hitting on me. You want a job here? Once the kids leave, oh wow, it's like, I didn't see this coming and not from a mile away. Look, it's the two sketchy guys. They've come back. So the two sketchy guys come back, they tie up Gibby and try to rob him. Then the message from earlier comes back, you know, the friends have to be there for each other, as the kids attack the robbers with dodgeballs, then chase them away. They all do the little Gibby thing, you know, the guys take their shirts off and they all embrace in a hug, and that's the end of the pilot. 23 minutes I'm not getting back, actually 46 because I had to watch it again for the video. So now with the breakdown out of the way, let's get on to... I usually tend to stay away from criticizing media on this channel, but good lord is this pilot horrible. For starters, it's just not funny. Not a lot of the jokes stick with you, and the only one that did for me was the infertility joke, but the only reason it was funny is because it came out of the blue and just caught me so off guard. And that basketball bit, it wasn't even funny. It was just uncomfortable. I know they've done other fetish fuel bits with Schneider shows, but like, little boys? Really? You're not helping your case here, Dan. It made me physically cringe. Like, no other comedic bit has made me physically cringe. Gibby is also portrayed as really creepy in the special. I know that Gibby also flirted in iCarly, but that actually worked and wasn't creepy. And here he's just flirting with this 24-year-old who has a boyfriend, by the way, while he's still in high school. Many of the characters are also too bland and one-dimensional. They could be boiled down to a couple words. Flip, the suck-up, Marcotte, the nerd, Ozzy, the dimwit, Jordy, the sass. Out of all the characters, though, I did like Jordy the most, and that's not saying much because the characters aren't really written well. I liked her the most, mainly because her writing was actually kind of a bit funny, like the infertility bit. A lot of her sass was actually pretty funny. But the most annoying character for me was Flip. He's just such a suck-up, and for what reason? Like, is it because Gibby is a high schooler and he feels the need to be cool with him? Is it because Gibby's like popular because of iCarly? Like, I just don't know. The other characters are okay, I guess. Ozzy is the resident dimwit of the characters, but there's been so many more in both Nickelodeon shows and other shows that were so much better than him. I don't really get the purpose of Sierra, the manager. I feel like she's just there, and there's not really a purpose for her. Another thing that bothered me is how Gibby got into doing the cafeteria work. He's done some weird things in the past that have gotten him in trouble, but it's like, why a weasel? I know you need to get Gibby into serving the middle schoolers because that's how the story kicks off. You know, he needs to save the kids from the chicken nugget, so then that way you can kick the story off. That's like sort of the inciting incident is what they call it. Also, I don't know what happened to the teacher that made him freak out. It's never explained in the episode, and it's pretty much just used as a plot point to get Gibby in trouble. Like, we immediately jump into the cold open with the teacher bent over his desk, screaming like a maniac, saying that his butt stinks. I assume maybe the weasel pooped in his underwear? I don't know. I really don't know. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is something that I saved for later because it happens later. The ending. Hey, that's a callback. The ending was very predictable. Remember those sketchy guys from earlier? Yeah, they robbed the place. Couldn't have seen that coming, right? Also, these are some of the most unprepared robbers in the world, possibly more unprepared than the Home Alone robbers. They plan to rob this rec center, they tie up Gibby, and then they're chased away with dodgeballs and fly swatters. These are grown men being chased away by 10-year-olds. with dodgeballs, foam dodgeballs, and fly swatters. Do they just like not have any weapons? Or can you just not buy weapons in Seattle? I get it, it's supposed to be a kid's show, but given the way it was written, it sounded like it was supposed to be for older children, like the 10 to 13 year old demographic. You know, the Skibbity Toilet Rizzler Kaisenat W generation. I'm way too old for this.
Mick Mangles is suspended.
So it used to be not known why the pilot was never picked up, but I think we know why. The pilot just sucked. It was poorly written, uncomfortable, and not funny. Dan Schneider's shows are supposed to be funny, but this one just didn't hit. I think the reason it wasn't picked up was because the executives just didn't like the pilot and didn't want to continue with the series, which I think was definitely the right move to go with. Will Gibby ever be revived in the future? Most likely not, given that Noah Monk is trying to forget that part in his life, which is actually pretty respectable. Like, I liked Gibby, but like, you know, it was toilet humor. So anyway, I just wanted to make a video about this because I've been interested in this story, this lost media story, for several years, and I've been following it, hoping that the pilot would actually get released. And when it finally did, it just really disappointed me, and I wanted to share why it made me feel this way. Anyway, be on the lookout for part 2 of the Ultimate Lost Media Iceberg soon. I've also got Nostalgic Things Volume 3 coming soon. So that's pretty much all I have. Thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you later.